Hello everybody, how are you guys doing? This is Rob of Rule2R Review, and welcome back. So today is super exciting. It is the best kind of day, because I'm going to talk a little bit more about Metroid, which is my favorite gaming subject, of course, to talk about. You've heard me talk about Metroid 1,005 times before, but there's a lot going on. I'm really excited about what will be finally revealed as Metroid Prime 4 once Nintendo is finally ready to show us this game. Almost for sure before the end of the year. We know we're going to see this game at some point. And there's another topic around Metroid that I've talked about before, and I want to sort of revisit in a sort of part 2 to the conversation, and it has to do with the Metroid Prime Trilogy. So it's a pretty straightforward idea and a straightforward topic, no big surprises here. We're discussing a little bit more whether or not it makes sense for Nintendo to eventually release the Metroid Prime Trilogy in some form on the Nintendo Switch, and beyond even if it makes sense, is it something that they could or will eventually do? Now, I did, as I alluded to a minute ago, I did make a video on this topic many months ago, actually probably coming up on a year ago, actually, because it was probably within the month or so after E3 last year, and of course it was at E3 that Nintendo revealed Metroid Prime 4 was indeed a game and being made and coming to the Switch sometime in the future. And through that, I started to think about a lot of other conversations I'd seen, my own fanboy wish list of all sorts of different Metroid things I would like to see happen or come to the Switch, and the most obvious and immediate one on a lot of our minds was the Metroid Prime Trilogy, which of course was released on the Nintendo Wii in, I want to say 2009, I'm like 99% sure it was 2009 that the trilogy released, and it was great. It's a collection of the GameCube games Metroid Prime and Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, as well as the Wii game Metroid Prime 3, with a little bit of graphical updates to the first two games, and most notably, of course, they took the awesome Wii remote controls from Metroid Prime 3 and added that into Metroid Primes 1 and 2, and man, was it beautiful. Of course, with Metroid Prime 4 coming out sometime soon and recently revealed, a lot of us start to think, well, what other things might make sense for Nintendo to do? They're finally showing us a lot of love and support for Samus and for Metroid, of course, because they announced Prime 4 and Metroid Samus Returns on the 3DS at the same time, which was huge news coming from a Nintendo that had all but ignored Metroid and Samus for like whatever 7 years at that time, 2010 from Other M to 2017 at the C3, and it was like, whoa, 2 Metroid games at once, this is amazing. And Samus Returns came out. I think it's an absolutely spectacular, fantastic Metroid game. So very happy with that game. And now we're waiting. We're waiting for Metroid Prime 4. When are we going to see it? When are they going to show us gameplay? When are they going to give us a date? When will that release date actually be? 2018, 2019, who even knows? You know me, I'm suspecting it's a 2019 game. And, you know, what other things could they do for Metroid? And I feel that releasing the Prime Trilogy in some form on the Switch totally makes sense. So again, I'm revisiting some points that I made on my video last year, but I thought it was important to do as the conversation's a little bit more relevant. That video, you know, being almost a year old, a lot of people might not have seen it. And so I wanted to touch on some of these points now that it's been almost a year since Metroid Prime 4 was released. A lot has happened in the Switch world since then, and it gives us a little more context to some of the ideas I discussed before when thinking about Nintendo possibly doing this now, almost a year later. So in my last video, there were really 2 major key points that I thought really lended to the idea of Nintendo wanting to release the Prime Trilogy on the Switch in some way. The first one was that I then and even still think that Metroid Prime 4 will be a 2019 game, which means there's anywhere from a year and a half to a 2-year gap or so between Samus Returns on the 3DS last September and Prime 4, sometime in probably 2019. Could be mid-2019, could be the end of 2019, like the holiday, which would make it exactly 2 years from Samus Returns. And so, with such a huge possible gap between those games, well, releasing a Prime Trilogy, or Prime in some fashion, a Metroid game on the Switch, could be a great way to sort of keep the Metroid hype rolling and keep people interested and invested in Samus, in the Metroid name and the Metroid series. Don't let people forget, hey, Metroid is still a thing. It's one of our favorite franchises. It's one of our longest running franchises. We've got new stuff coming. Don't let Metroid pass you by. Like, don't forget, we care about it. You should care about it too. and people will say, oh man, okay, Prime 4 is coming out, or that, Prime 4 is coming out, so that I get to play the Metroid Prime Trilogy, which will just make me feel all the Metroid Prime love, and then when Prime 4 comes out, I'll be that much more excited. Of course, the other big thing that I discussed as a theory to the Metroid Prime Trilogy was the Joy-Cons. These suckers right here, these little bad boys, I think these are a huge reason why it's going to make sense for Nintendo to want to eventually release the Prime Trilogy on the Nintendo Switch. Now, before I even go into that a little bit more, we have to consider how Nintendo might release the game. And of course, they could do something just like they did where they took the original Wii release with no changes or enhancements and made it available, downloadable on the Wii U, which was really cool. They did it. It was like $20 or something, like an incredible deal considering the physical version, especially the Steelbook version. I have the limited edition. This thing's like $100 or something if you tried to buy it. And even if you bought it in just a regular case, I think it's still like 60 or 80 bucks or something pretty pricey. So they released a digital version on the Wii U for 20 bucks, a steal of a deal. I mean, such a good deal for 3 of the best games ever made. And of course, the Wii U could, seamlessly work with the Wii Remote and the Nunchuck, so it was a fantastically easy way to make it available to people. So maybe they do the same thing again on the Switch, where they just basically take those 3 games or the Trilogy package, no enhancements, just put it on the Switch. Just boom, there it is, digital, download, whatever. You can buy it on the eShop, and you can play those games on your Switch, and just, Bob's your uncle, have fun. Of course, the other option that gets really exciting, and man, I want to believe that this is possible, is a remaster, man. What if they did something to actually improve this game? I mean, visually would be the most exciting thing right off the bat, of course, because those games look so incredible even to this day. They were all so far ahead of their time. Well, 1 and 2 were far ahead of their time. Prime 3 was not, although it is still a very, very gorgeous game. But Primes 1 and 2 were very ahead of their time for their hardware in the years that they released. Great running games, 60 frames per second, an amazing engine. Like, what a wonderful engine was created to run the Prime Trilogy of games. Like, really, go back and replay those games and tell me that that's not really impressive what those games were doing. That being said, they're all pretty old. Even the most recent game is 11 years old. Prime 3, the most recent, is 11 years old. Think about that, 2007 on the Wii. So if they were to update the visuals, even if they did the basic thing where they just basically gave it like an HD polish, that would be great. I would love to see that game running in HD. However, I do think that even some of the polygonal sort of outliers and like weirdness of the game, maybe the datedness of it might show up a little bit if they did that, because the edges would be that much sharper and jaggier. So while I would like that, it would be even cooler if they did a little bit more of a newer treatment to the assets. And I think that could be something really, really special. Change a couple of things, kind of like they did like with the Ocarina of Time remaster for the 3DS. What if they did that to the next level for the Prime Trilogy on the Switch? Man, that would be so cool. Now, if they did that, to me, one of the more exciting things would be that there's a really good chance it would also become a physical release. I think it would be easier for Nintendo to justify charging like a full price for an HD remaster or a complete remake remaster of the Prime Trilogy on the Switch. And if they do that, they could sell it for 60 bucks, whatever. And sure, paying 60 bucks compared to 20 definitely sucks. But if you get a completely remade 3 games, and if you get a physical copy, because here's the thing, once you step into $60 territory, you can also justify the physical copy. I mean, that would be worth it to a lot of people, and that would get me excited. A physical copy of a Nintendo Switch, remade, remaster, Metroid Prime Trilogy, like my 3 favorite games ever on the Switch, portable. Holy cow, that would just be so amazing. So, all of those things are things to consider with how Nintendo might want to release the game, if in fact they did. But let's go back to the reasons why it makes sense. I want to revisit the Joy-Con thing for a minute, because there is a huge sort of... I have this big thesis, basically, about why I think the Joy-Con thing really will justify Nintendo doing this if they ever do. And it's predicated on my theory that the Joy-Cons are going to play a very important role into Metroid Prime 4 specifically. And I do ultimately believe that. I've kind of hinted at this before in some videos, but I have to say, my personal feeling about Metroid Prime 4 is I think Nintendo will make it probably their biggest and best and most bold push of the Joy-Con technology we've seen yet. Like, I think HD Rumble, maybe that IR sensor, I think the motion control aspect of it, the dual Joy-Cons where you hold them actually separately as opposed to, like, even with your Switch. And of course, if you have it in portable, you can still do motion this way. But what if Nintendo wants people to do this kind of thing? Kind of like Mario Odyssey or whatever. I feel like they really want the Joy-Cons to be justified and sold with Metroid Prime 4, because it'll be in first person. We've seen what the motion control and separate hand Wii Remote and nunchuck controls have done for those games in the past with the Metroid Prime trilogy itself. So why wouldn't they take that to the next level with Prime 4? I think it makes sense. I expect Prime 4 to be a huge showcase for the Joy-Con technology, and so through that, re-releasing the Prime trilogy on the Switch, remade with Joy-Con controls, I think would be a great way to get people excited for the new controls, as well as get people used to the new controls. The Prime games are very unique in so many ways, including how they play and how they control, even for being first-person games. And so I feel like for old Prime players, it's a great way to get people reacclimated with the motion controls of playing a Prime game to prepare them for Prime 4. For newer players who maybe have never played a Prime game, or even a Metroid game, like maybe some younger gamers and stuff out there who are still excited for Metroid Prime 4, this could be a great way to introduce them to the idea as a whole, to all things Metroid, all things first-person Prime, and all things motion control first-person gameplay. And I feel like that's probably one of the best business reasons for Nintendo to do it, because if there's a slight chance that if Nintendo kind of botches how they roll out the motion controls, it could become a barrier for a lot of people, and it could be a sticking point. It could be something that turns them off or alienates a lot of gamers, and we might have something kind of akin to the Star Fox Zero thing. Not to that degree, because I feel Prime 4 will control far better than Star Fox Zero did. And I also think that people will be more willing to give it a chance. I mean, I love Star Fox Zero, but it's very flawed, and I don't see Nintendo making those same mistakes. But still, some people might be like, this is too much Nintendo, this is too weird, what are you doing? However, the Prime Trilogy might be a good way to soften the blow and ease people into the new controls that I assume are going to be the foundation of Metroid Prime 4. Granted, I would also expect Nintendo to make standard controls an option here. I think in the Switch era, that's something we're seeing where, with the rare exception, they seem to understand that you really shouldn't force too many of these kinds of things on the gamer. Definitely make them an option. Definitely make the motion control gimmicky stuff the ideal way to play a game, like with Mario Odyssey, for example, but you gotta give people options. The lack of options was one of the main killers of Star Fox Zero. I think people would have warmed up to that game a lot more if it was designed around standard controls and motion controls. And I don't think that Nintendo wants to do that stuff anymore. Splatoon is kind of the outlier. Well, actually, no, Splatoon, I think, honestly, that gives you enough options as well. To be fair, I never play without motion controls, so I don't know, but I'm reminding myself, yeah, Splatoon does give you those options. So, yeah, I don't think that Nintendo would force this on people, but I do think they're going to want people to play the game this way. You know, and then the last, going back to the very first point, is the hype, man. Nintendo's going to want to keep this hype going. So here's the thing. I've been saying for a long time I think Metroid Prime 4 is a 2019 game and not a 2018 game. A lot of people wanted to call me crazy. Everyone thinks I'm nuts. I think that's mostly wishful thinking on people's parts because we all just want this game right now. So people want to say, oh, Nintendo's going to release it right now, 2018, just because I want it, so it'll be 2018. And like, hey, I've said it 1,000 times, maybe that does happen. I'm not putting all my money on 2019, but I'm putting a lot of my money on 2019 because I just feel like that is what they're doing with this game. And now that we've had Smash Brothers revealed and confirmed for 2018, which was not the case with my video last year, I think that further means that there's a good chance that Nintendo doesn't need to release a game as big and high profile as Metroid Prime 4 this year. Smash Brothers can fill up most of their holiday sales, I feel, and Smash Brothers will get so many Switches into people's homes and into people's hands that will vastly widen the market of the amount of Switches. That huge install base will widen the market of the amount of Switches that they can then sell Metroid Prime 4 to, and we can see Metroid Prime finally, or Metroid I should say, finally be the big hit again that we know it really should be. And so if that's true, Metroid Prime comes out in 2019, why not release this Prime Trilogy, even if it's just a straight port? They do the $20 port thing on the eShop, fine, whatever. Why not do that in 2018 to keep that Metroid hype rolling into 2019 for Prime 4, and you have Samus Returns in 2017, the Prime Trilogy, 3 of the best games ever made, including my favorite game ever made, Metroid Prime, release those in 2018, and then you get Prime 4 in 2019. Bing, bang, boom, you get 3 years in a row with Metroid love all over the place. Samus is everywhere, kicking ass again, and we all love it, and it would just be the best. It would be a dream come true. So I kind of think that's it. I think that's where I can really wrap this conversation up. Like I said, this is just a revisiting of this topic. Not a whole lot of new information that I didn't touch on my last video is really present here, except for the fact that, you know, Smash Brothers was confirmed in the time since then, and also we've seen the Switch continue to be a mammoth success and a huge hit and sell like crazy, and the install base is blowing up. It's already passed the Wii U in sales. I mean, all of these things we weren't even 100% sure of last June at E3 when Prime 4 was revealed and I made my video. But now it's just it's a different world, man. The Switch is unstoppable, and Smash Brothers is coming this year. I think Prime 4 next year, and I think the Prime Trilogy, Nintendo really might see a benefit to releasing it this year. So that's it for me, guys. Always fun to revisit the Metroid topic. I love talking about Metroid in a world where we have new Metroid games coming, man. Because like 2 years ago, I think a lot of us were worried that was never going to happen again. It's like, well, I guess we get Federation Force, and that's probably going to be it forever. And that's not the case. We got 2 games coming, and maybe we're going to get a third with the Prime Trilogy. So what do you guys think about this? Do you expect the Prime Trilogy? Do you not? Do my reasons and justifications make a lot of sense? Hopefully, if you did see last year's video, you still found this video kind of entertaining, even though I talked about a lot of this stuff a year ago. A lot of fun, man. Let's get excited. I think we're going to get some Metroid love in the next couple of months and probably at E3 from Nintendo. So, discuss the Prime Trilogy. What do you expect Nintendo to do with it this year? And that's it. So, thanks as always for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of 2 Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.